Okay, so get ready to dive into some revolutionary ideas about education. We're going deep into the world of Charlotte Mason. And let me tell you, she's going to make you rethink how we teach kids, especially the little ones.
You got that right. Charlotte Mason, she was something else, way ahead of her time, really. You see, back then, like late 1800s, early 1900s education, it was all about treating kids like, well, empty containers, just waiting to be filled with knowledge, you know?
Right, like those old school classrooms, all about memorizing facts and taking tests.
Exactly. But Mason, she saw it differently. She looked at kids and saw these little explorers, naturally curious, just thirsty for knowledge. It's like they're already raring to go.
So she wasn't about force-feeding information, more like guiding their natural curiosity, right?
Exactly. She called it self-education, this idea that kids, they're hardwired to learn, and our job as adults, it's not to force-feed them facts, but to guide that inner drive, you know?
Yeah.
Nurture it.
That's a pretty radical idea, especially back then. So instead of treating kids like passive receivers of information, we should be empowering them to seek out knowledge on their own terms.
100%. And one of the best ways she thought we could do this was by giving young minds a real buffet of ideas, like a constant feast. She used this metaphor of the mind as a house, really powerful imagery.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Break down this house metaphor for me. What does she mean by that?
Well, picture this. You've got a house, right? But you only care about the outside, how it looks, the paint job, the landscaping. You never bother to furnish the inside, make it comfy, make it a place you'd actually want to spend time in. That's what Mason thought we were doing with education. Too much focus on the outside, the grades, the test scores, all that, and we forget to actually feed the mind itself, the good stuff, the intellectual food it craves.
Okay, so what exactly is this intellectual food our brains are so hungry for?
Well, Mason, she was all about what she called living books. Think books that are well-written, engaging, exciting, not those dry textbooks packed with facts and figures, but stories, biographies, history, even science. Stuff that fires up the imagination, you know? Makes you actually want to learn.
So instead of handing a kid a textbook about, photosynthesis, we should give them a biography of a botanist who made some crazy discovery about plants.
Yeah, you're getting it. It's about bringing that subject to life, making it an experience, something they can really sink their teeth into.
Love that. But how do we know they're really taking it all in?
Yeah.
If they're not just reading these stories, but actually engaging with the ideas, thinking critically about them.
Well, that's where Mason had this other brilliant yet simple technique. She called it narration. And it's really remarkable how effective it can be.
Narration. See, now that just sounds way too simple. How does that even work?
Okay, so imagine this, right? You've got a kid totally absorbed in a biography, maybe about Marie Curie, and they're not just memorizing dates and stuff, but they're really into her story, her discoveries. Then instead of hitting them with a quiz, you just ask, hey, what really stood out to you there? Anything you remember.
So you're letting them process it all in their own way?
Yeah.
Making their own connections? No right or wrong answers, really?
Exactly. And that's the beauty of it. Just by telling it back to you in their own words, it cements the learning, you know? Not only are they understanding it better, remembering it better, but they're also flexing those language skills without even realizing it. It's kind of amazing.
It's like they're picking it up naturally, organically, just by enjoying the material, not even feeling like it's work.
Totally. And get this, Mason. She believed this whole approach, this guiding, instead of dictating, it should apply to everything, every subject.
Wait, so we're not just talking about books and narration here. There's more.
Oh yeah, way more. Remember that whole person idea? Well, she was a big believer in hands-on learning, really experiencing things firsthand, using all your senses, getting out there.
Oh, we're talking nature walks, exploring the outdoors, getting those hands dirty, that kind of thing.
100%. And don't forget the arts. Music, drawing, crafting, all of it. For Mason, those weren't just hobbies, they were essential, key to growing your creativity, your discipline, even your sense of beauty.
It's like tapping into that natural wonder that kids have, right?
Yeah.
That sense of awe. Okay, but how do we actually make this work, practically speaking? I mean, it sounds fantastic in theory, all this freedom and exploration, but we live in a world of tests and, wanting to see those measurable results. So how do we bridge that gap?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the thing is, it's a question Mason was already wrestling with back then, over 100 years ago. But what's so cool is she actually provides a framework, a philosophy, that we can take and adapt to our own lives, to our own time.
So it's not about rigid rules, but more about getting the spirit of her ideas, seeing those kids as capable, curious learners, and then I guess figuring out how to support that, right? But where do we even start?
Well, I'd say a good starting point is actually with ourselves. Think about it. What are we passionate about? What books have changed how we see the world? Because often the best way to get kids excited about learning is to, model that excitement ourselves.
Yeah.
Let them see us light up.
So instead of just being like, read this, we should be sharing our own discoveries with them,
Yeah.
right? Like, hey, check out this awesome book. It blew my mind.
Exactly. And honestly, never underestimate just spending time in nature together, watching the seasons change, noticing the little details like a spider web or a bird in flight. Those moments, they create the perfect space for curiosity to blossom, for that sense of wonder to take root.
It's about building a culture of learning, not just for kids, but for all of us, really.
100%. And when we do that, when we create those spaces where learning is just a natural, joyful part of life, well, we might just find that we're not only nurturing their minds, but our own too. It's a win-win, really.
Love that. And you know what? It's pretty amazing. Ideas from a century ago, still so relevant, maybe even more so today. This whole concept of self-education that Mason championed, it really makes you rethink what learning can be. It's about seeing those kids as active seekers, not passive receivers. Kids who are driven by curiosity, by this innate desire to understand the world around them. And it's on us as adults to create those environments that feed that curiosity, that nurture their minds and souls. Environments where learning is a joy, not a chore. And that's something I think we can all get behind, right?
Absolutely.
So we're basically talking about ditching those rigid teacher-centered classrooms for something a lot more flexible, something that lets the child really take the lead.
In a way, yeah, but it's not like we're just throwing structure out the window. Mason, she still believed in a structured learning environment, but one with room to breathe. Think like curated book lists, not just any old book, but books across different genres, different time periods, and dedicated time for exploring nature, being outside, and then those opportunities to get creative with music, with art.
So it's about setting the stage, right? Giving them the tools, the resources, and then stepping back, letting them learn at their own speed in their own way.
Exactly. And that's where we, as educators, we really come in. We become these observant guides, noticing what sparks their interest, gently pointing them towards resources that can help them dive deeper, and always encouraging them to talk about what they're learning, to use that narration skill.
It sounds like a real balancing act, find that sweet spot between structure and freedom. So for those of us who, were used to the old ways, the more traditional methods, what's a good first step? Where do we even begin with all this?
Honestly, a great place to start is with ourselves. What lights us up? What are we passionate about? What books have really stayed with us, changed how we see things? Because a lot of times, the best way to get kids excited about learning is to let them see that excitement in us.
So instead of just being like, go read this, we should be sharing what we're reading, what we're discovering, right?
Yeah.
Like, hey, this book is amazing. You have to check it out.
Exactly. Share that passion. And honestly, just being in nature together, that's huge. Watching the seasons change, noticing the tiny details of a spider web or how a bird flies, those shared moments, they plant those seeds of curiosity, of wonder, and that's where it all starts.
It's about making learning a part of life for everyone, not just kids.
Now you're getting it. And when we do that, when we make learning a natural, joyful part of life, we win, the kids win. It's incredible.
It really is amazing how these ideas from over a century ago, they still resonate so strongly today. Charlotte Mason's vision of self-education, it really challenges us to rethink what learning can be. It's about seeing those kids not as empty vessels, but as these incredible explorers, driven by this natural curiosity, this thirst to understand the world around them. And it's up to us to create those learning environments that nurture that spark, that help them grow into those curious, lifelong learners. So as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of Charlotte Mason, I'm left thinking, what small step can each of us take today to cultivate that love of learning in ourselves and in the kids in our lives? Because let's face it, when we ignite that spark, the possibilities, they really are endless.